Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Gerald Monroe. I'm 34 years old. And if you had told me 4 years ago that I'd walk away from my family for good, I wouldn't have believed you. Back then, I worked as a floor rep at a mid-sized appliance store in San Antonio. I stocked blenders, talked people into buying 4K TVs, and tried to ignore the way my family winced every time I mentioned my job. Because in the Monroe family, if your paycheck didn't come with prestige, you didn't really count. My older brother Marcus was a surgeon. My sister Elaine, tenured professor at Rice University. And my younger cousin, who our parents treated like royalty, had just landed a spot at some AI startup in Silicon Valley. My father, Charles Monroe, had been a CPA for 35 years. Precise. Cold. A man who believed success was a moral obligation, and failure, a disease. Guess which one he thought I had? At every family dinner, I could feel it. The forced smiles. The quiet jokes. The snide, "So how's the microwave empire doing, Gerald?" from Marcus, or the "Do you offer tech support too?" from Elaine. But it was my father's voice that always cut the deepest. He didn't raise his tone, he didn't need to. One sharp glance from him could shrink you. One comment, and you felt like a bug under a microscope. And yet, through all of that, I kept trying. I kept showing up. Because part of me still hoped, still believed, that one day he'd look at me and be proud. So when his 65th birthday came around, a huge party, of course, I decided to surprise him. Not with something flashy or expensive. I couldn't afford that. But with something thoughtful. Personal. See, years ago, when I was a kid, he told me that his dream was to visit Monaco and watch the Formula One Grand Prix live. He said it in passing, over a game of chess we played during one of the only peaceful weekends we ever shared. I remembered. I saved for 6 months. Every commission, every tip. I didn't go out. Didn't order food. I scrimped and scratched together enough for one ticket, not for me, just him, and booked a hotel near the marina with a perfect view of the circuit. I even found a local photographer to capture his trip. I put the confirmation slip and the photo package voucher in a small velvet box. And when his birthday came, I wrapped it neatly with a navy ribbon, his favorite color. I shouldn't have gone to that party. Their house was full of high society. Real estate developers, judges, surgeons. Everyone dressed in black tie like they were attending a political fundraiser. When I walked in wearing my best, but modest, blue blazer and a $30 tie from Target, it was like the music skipped a beat. Elaine air-kissed me and whispered, "Did you get lost on the way to the mall?" Marcus offered a limp handshake and said, "Still selling toasters, bro?" I clenched my jaw. Smiled. I reminded myself, "You're not here for them. You're here for Dad." The gift table was already piled high with designer watches, Montblanc pens, and what looked like a pair of first-edition Hemingway novels. But I placed my little box right there in the center. Not out of pride. Just hope. When the gift opening began, my heart pounded. He opened Elaine's $2,000 golf set with practiced grace. Marcus gave him a Rolex. Laughter and admiration circled the room like champagne. Then he picked up mine. The box was small. Modest. He turned it in his hand like it offended him. He looked at me, smirked, and said loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Did someone leave their cufflink box here by mistake? Or is this another one of Gerald's big dreams in miniature?" The crowd chuckled. I said nothing. I couldn't. My throat closed up. He opened the box, saw the confirmation slip, and stared at it for a full 5 seconds. Then, he scoffed. Actually scoffed. He held up the paper between 2 fingers like it was a used napkin. "Monaco," he said. You think I have time to go play tourist in Europe? Who do you think you're talking to? You really thought this would impress me? Then he tossed the box aside. Didn't even read the letter I'd tucked inside. Didn't even look at me again. The laughter resumed. But it wasn't laughter anymore. It was buzzing static, ripping through my ears, my spine, my soul. I stood there, trying to keep my smile glued to my face, feeling like every person in that room had just taken a bite out of my dignity. No one spoke up. Not Elaine. Not Marcus. Not even my mother. They let me drown in silence. And I realized, in that moment, they didn't just see me as a disappointment. They enjoyed it. I left quietly. No drama. No outburst. Just slipped out the door and into the cool Texas night. But that was the last time I ever let them laugh at me again. I didn't cry that night. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But the pain was too deep for tears, it was the kind that hollows you out from the inside. That gnawing ache that wraps itself around your ribs and squeezes until you can barely breathe. I drove for hours with no destination. Just the road, the dark sky, and the sound of my own breathing. I ended up in a diner on the edge of town, one of those places where the lights flicker and the coffee tastes like burnt ash. I sat there, staring into a chipped mug, replaying my father's face when he looked at my gift like it was trash. I didn't even eat. I just kept asking myself one thing. Why wasn't I ever enough? My father once told me, during a rare one-on-one conversation, Gerald, you have potential. But you don't push hard enough. You settle. You coast. It had stuck with me. But I had tried. God, I had tried. I didn't become a doctor or a lawyer or some high-powered exec. But I worked. I showed up every day. I treated people with kindness. I saved up for that gift with every ounce of effort I could muster. Not for recognition. Just to make him smile. And it still wasn't enough. When the sun came up, I went home to my one-bedroom apartment, the one with the leaky sink and the second-hand couch. I sat there for hours, staring at the ceiling. I ignored texts from coworkers. Ignored a call from my manager. I didn't want to face anyone. Not even myself. For the next few weeks, I went through the motions. Work. Sleep. Repeat. I couldn't focus. Customers asked me questions, and I stared at them blankly. I made mistakes on receipts. Missed appointments. My boss, a decent guy named Darren, pulled me aside one day and asked if everything was okay. I told him I was fine. But I wasn't. I was unraveling. Every night, I'd open my laptop and scroll through photos of my family, pictures from vacations, birthdays, weddings. In every single one, I looked like a visitor. A ghost. Always in the background. Always on the edge. I started avoiding family calls. I even blocked Elaine and Marcus for a while. My mother called once, left a voicemail that just said, "You should learn not to overreact." That hit harder than anything else. Overreact. As if years of silent judgment and outright humiliation could be brushed off like lint. I almost quit my job. I almost gave up. But something happened that pulled me back from the edge. It wasn't dramatic. No lightning bolt or sudden epiphany. It was a little girl. She came into the store with her mom, about 7 years old, curly hair, freckles, and eyes that reminded me of how I used to look at the world before I stopped believing in it. They were looking for a basic microwave. Nothing fancy. I helped them pick one out, showed them how to use the settings, answered the mom's questions with patience I didn't know I still had. When they left, the little girl tugged on my sleeve and said, "You're really nice. I hope you get rich someday." Then she smiled and skipped off. I don't know why, but that moment cracked something open in me. She didn't know me. Didn't care about titles or money or family prestige. She just saw me for who I was. That night, I opened my laptop. I deleted every photo of my family from my hard drive. Every voicemail. Every text. I blocked every number except one, my grandmother's. Then I wrote a resignation letter. But I didn't submit it. Instead, I wrote something else, a plan. I was done begging for respect. I was going to build it. Not for my father. Not for my siblings. Not for my mother or the legacy they worshipped like a religion. For me. That's when the fire started to burn again, not rage, but focus. Precision. Like the kind my father used to brag about in his balance sheets. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing. They would never look at me the same again. The night I decided to start over, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a blank notebook. Not a digital note, not a to-do list. A real notebook, spiral-bound, half covered in dust. I found it tucked behind some old receipts in the kitchen drawer. On the first page, I wrote 5 words in block letters. Build something they can't ignore. I didn't know what that meant yet. But I was ready to figure it out. I started small. I didn't have capital. I didn't have connections. But I had time, drive, and the internet. I spent weeks studying side hustles, business models, real estate flips, e-commerce, even dropshipping. Most of it was noise, but eventually I stumbled on a video of a man flipping distressed properties in Florida, turning abandoned houses into 6-figure profits. I was hooked. I dove in headfirst. Late nights reading foreclosure laws. Early mornings watching tutorials on flipping homes. I took notes like a man possessed. And somewhere in that tornado of research, I found something that changed everything. A property listing on an obscure government site. 3-bedroom house in Orlando. Foreclosed. Water damage. Bad roof. Starting bid. $6,500. I didn't have the full amount. But I did have $3,200 in savings and a credit card with a painful limit. And I had nothing left to lose. I called the bank. Got pre-qualified for a line of credit through a home improvement grant. Flew to Orlando on a red-eye flight. Slept in a rental car the first night, just to be the first bidder at the auction. I won. With my name on the deed and my head spinning, I moved to Florida with nothing but a duffel bag and a burning hunger in my chest. That house was a wreck. Termites in the walls. Mold in the kitchen. Floors sagging like wet cardboard. I couldn't afford contractors, so I learned everything, plumbing, drywall, electrical, tile, through sheer desperation and YouTube. It nearly broke me. I slept on plywood for 6 months. Ate canned food. Showered using a garden hose once when the water was out. But one night, standing in that dusty hallway, paint roller in one hand and bruises on both knees, I looked around and realized, it wasn't a house anymore. It was a resurrection. I sold that home for $93,000 net profit. I cried for 2 hours straight. But that wasn't the twist. That was just the beginning. After that first flip, I reinvested everything. I got faster. Smarter. I built an LLC. Hired 1 contractor. Then 2. Started a YouTube channel just to document the process and share the hard lessons. The views trickled in at first, but I didn't care. I wasn't chasing fame. I was chasing freedom. Then something happened. One video, a clip of me breaking down how I flipped a duplex in 90 days, went viral. 500,000 views in a week. The subscribers poured in. Investors started emailing. Sponsorships. Podcast interviews. Clients wanting mentorship. And then, buried in my inbox, I found the message that would crack open the final layer of the past. From First Point Legal Services. Subject, Trust Disbursement Inquiry, Gerald Monroe. Dear Mr. Monroe, we are writing to inform you that the Charles and Lillian Monroe Family Trust contains an unclaimed asset in your name. Please contact us to verify your identity. I stared at the screen. Unclaimed asset. In my name. I called the firm. After 20 minutes of security questions, a bored-sounding associate told me what I never expected to hear. Apparently, your grandfather, on your father's side, had a trust fund set aside for you. He passed over your father and left each grandchild a portion, but your segment was held in escrow because no one could reach you. I couldn't believe it. My grandfather, the same one my father rarely spoke about, had left me money. Not a small amount either. $128,000. I sat in stunned silence. They had known. My family had known this for years. And they never told me. I hung up and sat there shaking. They'd all mocked me for not becoming someone successful. All while they let me struggle, knowing I had something that could have changed my life. That wasn't just betrayal. That was intentional. That was war. At that moment, everything inside me locked into place. My revenge wouldn't be about money. It would be about power. Control. Perception. They wanted to pretend I was nothing. I'd make sure the entire world knew who I really was, before they even realized they'd lost me forever. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone to confront them, not Marcus, not Elaine, not even my mother. No. That would have been letting them dictate the rules again. And I was done playing by their rules. They wanted me quiet. Invisible. Then my revenge would be exactly that, silent, elegant, and irreversible. I took the trust fund payout and used it strategically, not for splurging, not even to celebrate. I bought 2 distressed homes in prime locations, flipped them using my now refined crew, and turned that $128,000 into $370,000 in less than a year. Then I incorporated a real estate consulting firm. GM Growth Group. My initials. My power. I built a brand with clean, sharp aesthetics, black and gold logo, minimalist website, professional photos. I hired a publicist from Miami who helped me get featured in a digital entrepreneur magazine. From there, things snowballed. TV spots. Podcasts. Speaking gigs. One day, my assistant showed me an Instagram video. Elaine was in it, laughing with a friend at some brunch spot in Houston. Behind her, a waiter was reading from his phone. Today we're talking about the man behind the fastest-growing real estate consultancy in Florida, Gerald Monroe of GM Growth Group. Elaine's smile faltered for a second. That's when I knew. They were seeing me. But not as the loser behind a microwave. As the man behind a movement. I waited 2 more years. I wasn't done cooking. Because my revenge. It wasn't just about success. It was about impact. Legacy. And timing. I bought a penthouse apartment in Miami. Modest by billionaire standards, but bold enough to get me listed in a regional business publication's top 40 under 40. And then, the moment came, a perfect, cruel, poetic moment. A letter arrived in my inbox. Subject. You're invited to Charles Monroe's 70th birthday gala, family only. Family only. Interesting. It was Elaine who sent the invite, likely at my mother's insistence. I hadn't spoken to any of them in over 5 years. Not since the Monaco gift incident. The message included a date, time, and RSVP link. No apology. No explanation. Just, a silent dare. I stared at the email for a long time. And then I smiled. Because what they didn't know, was that I had been preparing for this. For years. I had already bought the building next to the venue. Why? Because I had looked into the Monroe family trust, deep into it. I'd hired forensic accountants. Lawyers. Discreet investigators. I wasn't looking to destroy them. Not yet. I was looking to own the very space they occupied. And I did. The venue Elaine had chosen was part of a two-property complex. The banquet hall was leased. But the adjacent high-rise, offices, penthouse, lobby gallery, was mine. Fully paid in cash. And I had a plan. I RSVP'd yes. I even wrote a note. Looking forward to seeing everyone. I'll bring a gift this time. One you'll never forget. Then I called my marketing team. We designed a corporate video, nothing flashy, just sleek, cinematic, dignified. A video showing GM Growth Group's humble beginnings. My first foreclosure flip. The sweat. The sacrifice. The rise. Then footage of the ribbon cutting at the new building. The Monroe Center for Independent Entrepreneurs. Named after me. Not after him. And set to premiere the same night as my father's gala. On a 40-foot screen facing the glass walls of the venue. I flew to Houston the week of the event. Dressed in a tailored navy blue tuxedo. No watch. No jewelry. Just confidence. I arrived fashionably late. Walked in as the band was playing soft jazz. Dozens of family members and friends turned to look. And for once, they didn't laugh. Elaine's wine glass nearly slipped from her hand. Marcus went pale. My father turned and blinked like he wasn't sure he was awake. I walked up to him calmly. "Happy birthday, Dad." He nodded stiffly, like he didn't know what to say. Like he couldn't tell if he should be proud, ashamed, or afraid. "Gerald," he muttered. "You came." "I did," I said. "And I brought a gift. Just like I promised." The banquet hall was quiet. Too quiet. You know the kind of silence I'm talking about, the kind where even the sound of a fork touching porcelain echoes like thunder. That's what happened when I said, "I brought a gift." My father looked confused. His face was blank, trying to stay neutral, but I could see it in his eyes, the tight flicker of worry. My mother froze beside him, the corners of her mouth twitching in a forced smile that couldn't quite hold. "Elaine." She reached for her phone. Marcus whispered something to her, but they were too late. Because right then, the lights dimmed. A humming sound rolled in from outside. Guests began murmuring, turning toward the towering glass walls that made up the back of the venue. They looked out into the night. And they saw it. A 40-foot LED screen on the adjacent building, facing the banquet hall like a movie theater window into another world. And then my face appeared on it. Not some old Facebook picture. Not the toaster salesman they remembered. But me, present day, in crisp cinematic footage, walking through renovated homes, shaking hands with clients, speaking at an entrepreneurship conference in front of thousands. The voiceover began. Gerald Monroe. Once overlooked. Once mocked. Built from nothing. Now empowering others to rise. Founder of GM Growth Group. Owner of 37 properties across Texas and Florida. Investor. Mentor. Leader. Their eyes were locked on the screen like it had hypnotized them. I saw one guest mouth, "That's Gerald." Another whispered, "Wait, that's your son, Charles." But it wasn't over. The video shifted to drone footage of the building next door. The words appeared slowly across the glass windows in giant, gleaming letters. The Monroe Center for Independent Entrepreneurs. I heard my mother gasp. Then the final scene. Me, cutting the ribbon. Camera zoomed in as I said. This center is for every kid who was told they'd never make it. For everyone who was laughed at in their own home. This is proof that you don't need anyone's approval to become something great. The screen faded to black. The lights returned. And the room stayed frozen. People looked at me like I had just split the sky in half. Not because I embarrassed them. But because they had just realized, they never knew who I really was. My father stood still, wine glass trembling in his hand. I walked over, handed him a sleek envelope, and said quietly, "Your name may be on my birth certificate. But I put my name on this city." He opened the envelope. Inside was a title deed. To the building next door. Underneath the legal name of my corporation was a note. "I bought this building 2 years ago. I named it after our family. Just not for the reasons you'd think. Gerald." They didn't say anything. What could they say? Marcus? He disappeared into the hallway, probably trying to make a call to a client or anyone who still thought he was the golden child. Elaine looked like she wanted to crawl inside a wine bottle and never come out. My mother finally walked up to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Why didn't you tell us?" I turned to her and said softly, "Would it have mattered? You never wanted to know." And then, without waiting for a response, I stepped away. The room remained stunned. A few cousins, ones who'd never joined the laughter, came over to congratulate me quietly. A couple of guests asked for business cards. But I wasn't there for the applause. I was there to bury the old version of myself. One guest, an elderly man who used to work with my father, approached me at the end of the night. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Your grandfather would have been proud. He always said the quiet ones burn the brightest." I nodded. "He's the only one who ever saw me." Then I walked out of the party. Not humiliated. Not mocked. But watched, like a man who had returned from exile with a crown forged in fire. Outside, I climbed into a modest black Mercedes. No Lamborghini. No theatrics this time. Just peace. As I pulled away from the venue, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Through the glass wall, I saw my father still standing there, envelope in hand, face slack with realization. He looked lost. But I wasn't. Not anymore. A week after the gala, I thought it was over. The revenge had landed. The message was clear. The power dynamic had flipped, and I was free. Or so I believed. But stories like mine rarely end with clean lines. Because sometimes, the past doesn't let go that easily. It started with a voicemail. My assistant, Rosa, handed me her phone. "You might want to hear this," she said, a strange look in her eyes. It was from an unknown number. The voice on the message? My father. "Gerald. I know I don't have the right. But I need to talk to you. Not as a father. Not as someone who hurt you. Just, as a man." I almost deleted it. But something in his tone, shaky, uncertain, stopped me. It was the first time I'd ever heard my father sound small. I called back. We met the next day, not at his house, not at the family estate, but at a small bench in a public park near the edge of town. He was already sitting there, dressed in a worn coat, no tie, no airs. He looked older. Like something had been drained out of him. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. I almost didn't. He nodded, like he expected that. I deserved that gala moment. I know I did. I didn't respond. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope. "There's something I never told you," he said, looking at the pond like he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. I didn't move. I just listened. He continued. "You remember when you were 16? That summer you spent at Grandpa Lyle's ranch? He told you stories about the war. The land. How the family came from nothing." I nodded slowly. "What you didn't know," he said, voice cracking, "is that he offered you a stake in that land. A legacy share. He told me he saw something in you, something he didn't see in Marcus or Elaine." My heart skipped. What? I said, stunned. What are you talking about? He wanted to give you the original deed to the east pasture, my father whispered. Said you were the only one who asked real questions. Who listened. He saw that spark in you before anyone else. I stared at him, stunned. That deed, he said, holding up the envelope, was worth nearly $500,000 by the time he passed. I intercepted it. I told the lawyers you'd lost interest. That you didn't want responsibility. My stomach turned. You stole it? He nodded, eyes downcast. Yes. Because I couldn't stand the idea that you, the one who worked in retail, the one who dropped out of grad school, would be the heir to the only land your grandfather truly loved. Silence. Heavy. Ugly. Thick as smoke. I was wrong, Gerald, he said, finally meeting my eyes. And now I'm watching your brother's law firm collapse. Elaine's on her third marriage. Your mother barely speaks to me. You're the only one who built something that lasts. He held out the envelope again. I want to give this back to you. It's yours. It was always yours. I took it slowly, my fingers trembling. Inside was the original land deed. Signed. Witnessed. Time-stamped. Proof. And just like that, the story twisted again. All those years. I thought they rejected me because I wasn't enough. But the truth? They rejected me because I was too much. Too different. Too dangerous to the image they wanted to preserve. They weren't ashamed of me. They were afraid of me. My father stood up to leave, then hesitated. You don't have to forgive me, he said. I just needed you to know the truth before I go. Go where? I asked. He gave a tired smile. Retirement. Maybe someplace quiet. I've done enough damage. I didn't respond. I let him walk away. And as I sat there, deed in hand, I realized something painful, but freeing. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn a place in a family built on control. But maybe I wasn't meant to belong there at all. Maybe I was always meant to build something outside of their walls. On my own land. With my name on the gate. I sat on that bench for a long time after my father walked away. The envelope in my hands weighed more than any gift I'd ever received, and not because of the paper. Because of the truth. I had spent years fighting to prove I was enough. Years burning the memory of their mockery into fuel. And now, sitting in that quiet park, I realized the game I thought I was playing was never mine to begin with. They had always feared me. Not because I was weak. But because I refused to be like them. And now? Now I had their respect, no, something better. I had independence. And the question that haunted me for so long, what do I do with it now, finally had an answer. Over the next few months, I didn't just sit on the land my grandfather had left me. I built on it. Literally. I used a portion of my trust, along with fresh investment capital, to start a foundation. Not just a center or an office, but a full-scale mentorship retreat for young adults from underserved communities. Kids who were Geralds. The ones written off by their own families. Laughed at. Pushed aside. We called it the East Pasture Initiative. Named after the very piece of land my father tried to steal. Reclaimed. Repurposed. Reborn. It had cabins, workstations, business labs, even a small farm, because I remembered what it felt like to work with my hands, to be tired from building something real. I invited guests from across the country to speak there, entrepreneurs, tech investors, former teachers, artists, and people with no degrees but incredible grit. And every few months, I'd return and speak myself. Not as the CEO. Not as the real estate mogul. Just as Gerald. The man who once sold toasters. And was never supposed to be anybody. And my family? They tried, in their own clumsy ways, to reconnect. Elaine emailed me every few months. Her messages were polite, carefully worded, full of phrases like, proud of you, and, regret how things unfolded. I replied once, to say thank you, but I never opened the door again. Marcus? He tried to pitch me on a business partnership after his firm lost its biggest client. I didn't even respond. My mother sent me a birthday card that first year after the gala. It had no message inside. Just her signature. It stayed sealed in a drawer for months before I eventually threw it out. But Lily? Lily was different. She came to visit the center. She walked the pasture with me. Helped plant a tree outside the main lodge. Sat with me on the porch and apologized, not for the past, but for not having the courage to stand beside me when I needed her most. I should have spoken up, she said, eyes full of tears. You did, I replied softly. When it mattered. Because when everyone else turned away, she was the only one who called. As for my father. He never came back to the center. Never called. Never wrote. But one day, an envelope arrived. No return address. No letter inside. Just a photo. It was him, standing beside the building I dedicated to independent entrepreneurs. One hand on the sign that bore our family name. The other hand resting on a cane. On the back of the photo, 3 words were written in shaky handwriting. You did it. I sat in my office that night, staring at the photo under soft lamplight. I didn't cry. But I felt something close. Not forgiveness. But peace. Because I finally understood something I'd been chasing my whole life. Justice doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes, it comes with silence. Sometimes, it comes with legacy. And sometimes, it looks a lot like becoming everything they said you'd never be. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.